The Abbasid Caliphate has crumbled. The vast Islamic empire that once stretched from India to Spain has now been fragmented. Spain is beyond Abbasid control. Egypt is taken over by the Fatimid dynasty, and the northern frontiers are under Seljuk control. Even part of the Levant and the Holy Land are now lost to the Christian Crusader forces. The unification of all the Muslims under one banner is now a dream long gone. But still today we talk about this era with great interest, as one of the most important turn of events in history. The influence of this era still shapes the idea of chivalry and glory in popular culture. Films are made, books are written, comics and games are created. From children to adults, people still reminisce about those days. Even after almost 800 years, the legends of this era influence the geopolitics of the Middle East. And all these are mostly because of the work of one single man, Salahuddin, the Righteous. He was the last great Sultan of the Abbasid Caliphate. More than that, he was the last Sultan who had a dream and dared to make it a reality. The dream of a unified Islamic force. The dream of reinstating the legacy and honor of the Caliphate. The dream of a free Jerusalem, free from the Crusaders. Yet Salahuddin did not have one swift victory after another, like any other great conqueror. He tried, he failed, he persisted, and learnt from his mistakes and came back stronger. He was bold, dutiful, and intelligent, yet his reign was filled with setbacks, treachery, and disappointments. That is why Salahuddin is so beloved. He is not like a hero from ancient mythology with superpowers. Rather, he is more of a human, flesh and bone. He is a hero not because he was the chosen one, rather because he was courageous enough to be one. He chose himself to become the one. As we dive into his life in the next couple of weeks, we will see how this hero was forged in hardship and courage. In the year 1149, a young boy of 10 named Yusuf ibn Ayub was playing in the yard of his home. Suddenly, he heard a call from the minaret of the mosque. The Zengid Sultan, Nur ad-Din Zengi, has returned victorious after a decisive battle with the Crusaders in Edessa. Edessa is now part of the Islamic Zengid dynasty. Hearing this news, people flood the streets in victory procession. The bravery and praise of Nur ad-Din is on everyone's tongue. Young Yusuf joins the rally as well. This event will have an everlasting effect on his young mind. Fighting the Crusaders and bringing back the lost glory of the Muslims will set the course of his life. Young Yusuf will grow up one day to be recognized as Salahuddin. At the age of 15, Salahuddin moved to Damascus with his family to complete his study. Damascus was then the capital of the Zengid dynasty, seat of Nur ad-Din. Salahuddin joined a madrasa in Damascus. We can think of a madrasa like a high school in the modern era. Salahuddin started learning about geometry, algebra, geography, as well as the Quran and other fields of Islamic study. At the same time, he was taken under the mentorship of his uncle, Asaduddin Shirkuh. Shirkuh was a general under Nur ad-Din. He was a man of solid build, a battle-hardened warrior. He lost one of his eyes in a battle and so used to wear a patch. This made him an imposing character. Under the mentorship of Shirkuh, Salahuddin started learning about military tactics and swordsmanship. After completing the training, Salahuddin joined Shirkuh's battalion and entered regular military service in the Zengid army. The time has come for Salahuddin to be of service to his childhood hero, Nur ad-Din. Meanwhile, in Egypt, a power struggle has erupted between two viziers of the Fatimid Caliphate. The Fatimids were a Shia dynasty and the Abbasids were Sunni. Sunni and Shia are the major two denominations of Islam. Historically, the two dynasties are rivals of one another. Anyway, back to Egypt. The two viziers trying to capture the de facto rule of Egypt were Sharwan and Dirgham. Sharwan was driven out of Egypt by his rival Dirgham. Sharwan asked for help from Nur ad-Din. So, in 1163, Nur ad-Din sent in an army under the command of Shirkuh to Egypt. Salahuddin also joined the army under his uncle's command. Salahuddin did not play any major role at this point, but the events that are about to unfold will be his first real lesson in military tactics and politics. So, we'll look into these events to understand how the stage was set for Salahuddin. With the help of Shirkuh's military prowess, Sharwan was reinstated as the Grand Vizier of Egypt. Shirkuh garrisoned his army near Cairo to support Sharwan's rule, but as time passed, the presence of a Sunni army in the heartland of the Shia dynasty started creating political friction in the Fatimid court. Sharwan was under great pressure to drive the Zengid army out of Egypt, but he himself had invited them, and without the support of this army, it would not be possible for him to hold on to power. So Sharwan started shopping for a new ally. Between the border of the Fatimid Egypt and Zengid Levant sat the kingdom of Jerusalem, a Crusader state under the reign of the Amalric. Sharwan established a secret alliance with Amalric and plotted to attack the Zengid army from both sides. Shirkuh and his army were stationed in a palace called Bilbis. They were attacked by Amalric from the northeast and by Sharwan from the southwest. This betrayal put the Zengid army in a critical situation. They were not strong enough to break through the lines of the Crusades to retreat to Syria. Neither could they fall back to Cairo because of Sharwan's betrayal. Seeing no other option to save his army, Shirkuh sent a message to Nur ad-Din for aid. Nur ad-Din was enraged by the betrayal. He had sent his army in good faith to help his ally in Egypt. But that same ally had now plotted to destroy his army by the help of Crusaders. How dare Sharwan betray Nur ad-Din's trust? Yet Nur ad-Din was a clever ruler. He did not act in haste. His main goal now was to save one of his most prominent generals and his force. He couldn't let his army be destroyed by the Crusaders. If that meant not taking revenge for Sharwan's betrayal now, so be it. There would be a time later to set the balance straight. Nur ad-Din could not send reinforcement to Egypt for Shirkuh's aid, as that would take a long time, and he was afraid that Shirkuh would not be able to hold off the enemy for long. So, he devised a plan to deter Amalric's campaign in Egypt. Nur ad-Din assembled a strike force and attacked the country of Tripoli. Not related to the current Libyan capital. The country of Tripoli was another Crusader state and an ally of Amalric. So, when Nur ad-Din attacked Tripoli, Amalric had to stop his advancement in Egypt and send part of his troops back to defend Tripoli. This gave Shirkuh a window to move his forces back to Syria and save his army, and he took that opportunity. The Zengid army was safe for now, but Nur ad-Din and Shirkuh did not forget the betrayal by Sharwan. To plot with the Crusaders against fellow Muslims could not go unpunished. They were waiting for the right opportunity. That opportunity came in 1168, when Amalric broke his alliance with Egypt and attacked Cairo. Amalric always had his eyes on Egypt, not only for expansion of his territory, but also for the vast riches of Egypt. The weak rule of Sharwan gave him the perfect chance to attack. Amalric assembled his naval force and sailed toward Cairo through the Nile Delta. Egypt was too weak to defend itself under Sharwan's rule. So the Fatimid Caliph, Al-Adid, begged Nur ad-Din to come and rescue Egypt. This was the moment that Nur ad-Din was waiting for. All these years of waiting in patience for the sweet taste of revenge had finally paid off. If they'd entered Egypt now as a liberating force, they would have the support of the people of Egypt to depose Sharwan, and as a bonus, they would also be able to defeat the Crusaders in yet another battle. So, the Zengids under the command of Shirkuh marched into Egypt. Salahuddin joined the expedition as well, this time as the commander of a battalion of the army. The Zengids and the Crusaders came face to face at a place called Al-Babain, west of Giza, near the desert border of the Nile. The Zengids chose this location intentionally for a strategic advantage which would become obvious later during the battle. For the time being, Salahuddin took control of the right wing of the army, and Shirkuh took the central command. The Crusader army was greater in number and stronger in arms than the Zengids, so Shirkuh and Salahuddin started discussing a battle strategy to make those advantages of the Crusaders ineffective. They came up with a clever plan. Salahuddin would impersonate the central commander of the army and pretend his soldiers were the central contingent. Shirkuh did not station all of his troops in the battlefield and hid part of them behind the dunes in the desert. As the Crusaders did not realize the plan, they charged with full might toward the Zengid central force. This was the moment Salahuddin had been preparing for all of his military life. If he couldn't defeat the enemy with sheer strength, he would do it through strategy. As planned, Salahuddin staged a feigned retreat. He commanded his army to fall back into the desert. The Crusaders chased Salahuddin and fell right into his trap. The heavy cavalry of the Crusaders lost their advantage in the steep and sandy terrain. They could not move quickly, whereas the lighter Zengid cavalry could move much faster on the same terrain. So the early advantage of the Crusaders was lost. Their lines broke down, and the battle was fragmented into smaller skirmishes, rather than a concentrated central attack. Shirkuh was waiting for the exact moment. He took his reserve force and returned to the offensive, and at the same time Salahuddin turned back with his force and launched a counterattack from the other side. Stuck between the dual offenses, the Crusader army was completely crushed. This was the first sign of Salahuddin's military genius, his first taste of victory against the Crusaders. From now on, Salahuddin is no more a bystander. He now has an active role to play. The young boy, inspired by the tales of defeating the Crusaders, is now capable of defeating the Crusaders on his own. Join us next time as we explore the early years of Salahuddin's administrative and military career, how he becomes the Grand Vizier, protects Egypt from yet another Crusader attack, strengthens the nation, and eventually becomes the Sultan of Egypt.